Hey folks, we're amped to be back, and while we may have been away, lots of exciting developments continued on. In case you haven't heard, our teams will be heading out to Los Angeles in a few short weeks for SIGGRAPH 2019 to celebrate the latest innovations in computer graphics. Find out what's in store for UE from CTO Kim Libreri, and hear from the likes of ILM X Lab, Walt Disney Imagineering, Digital Domain, and more at this year's user group. You must register to attend. There will also be many presentations from Epic devs at our booth and longer tech talks at the show. The latest round of free marketplace packs became available on the 1st of July. Make sure to grab this month's selections: a custom movement pack, an explosions builder, a fantasy and medieval architecture kit, a first-person story adventure template, and a liquid simulation blueprint. A dynamic grass system and a modular building set have been added to our permanent collection as well. ILM X Lab's been busy creating new, thrilling VR experiences, including Vader Immortal, a home VR experience, and their latest Void experience, Ralph Breaks VR. Whether coming face to face with Vader himself or exploring the vastness of the internet, ILM X Lab continues to bring these magnificent worlds to life using the power of Unreal Engine. Find out more about both of these impressive projects and how ILM X Lab achieves such high fidelity within the bounds of VR. In addition to games, the VR space is a great way to experience history. If you've ever wondered what being on the unsinkable RMS Titanic was like, you'll soon have your chance in Titanic Honor and Glory. In an effort to recreate the Titanic's interior and exterior as accurately as possible, the team has tapped historians, writers, artists, and collectors to amass a comprehensive collection of plans, photos, interviews, and other documentation related to the Titanic's design. Developed by Vintage Digital Revival, you can play a demo of the part virtual museum, part whodunit today. From the mind of Justin Roiland, one of the co-creators of Rick and Morty, Trover Saves the Universe is a VR game that was designed to fully utilize the medium's strengths. To see how the studio created Trover Saves the Universe, we interviewed lead designer Eric Meyer. The Squanch Games developer talks about how they came up with the story and gameplay premise, reveals how much of the dialogue was ad-libbed, and elaborates on how creating humor for a video game is different than writing for a TV show. In mid-June, we announced our Cinematic Summer event, where we encourage you to take the director's seat and create your own short film. The contest will run through July 25th, so there's still time to work on your creation, and don't think you're limited to game cinematics. We'd love to see your archviz scenes, sprawling landscape designs, or towering skyscrapers. Whatever industry you're in, we want you to use your talents and wow us with your summer tale. Hypercharge Unboxed recently relaunched into Early Access 2.0 and now features a wealth of improvements such as a progression system, new weapons, new enemies, and more. Much of the game's charm comes from the fact that it leans on toy-driven nostalgia to create a wonderful sandbox experience. Setting up defenses to shoot waves of enemy toy soldiers within relatable childhood environments that include bedrooms and toy stores makes the game feel like a mixture of Toy Story meets Left 4 Dead. In an interview with Digital Cyber Cherries, the devs talk about their inspirations while developing the game, elaborate on what toys they sought to incorporate, and delve in how they incorporated both 4-player split screen and online co-op while keeping performance in check. We also caught up with Ectra Games as they transitioned to UE4 to build their most ambitious game yet with Torchlight Frontiers. They explain how they're building the game's vibrant animated world, which strays from the more drab and dreary aesthetics other games in the genre tend to lean on, while detailing the innovative measures the company is using to develop the highly anticipated action RPG. For the Game of Thrones fans out there, you may be interested to know that one of your favorite shows includes Unreal in their production pipeline. Befores and Afters spoke with the production team behind the visualization and execution of the finale's throne room sequence and offers a great write-up on how the scene was built. And on to our weekly Karma earners, we'd like to give shout-outs to Shadow River, Mo Water, T. Sumisaki, Everynone, Zombie2, Pavi Pavi, Presmac 2222, Indie Game Cove, TPTD, and Burial. These lovelies have helped out devs on Answer Hub. Want the chance to see your name up here too? Well, head over and answer questions. First up for this week's Community Spotlight is Scraper First Strike, a VR shooter game with RPG and exploration elements. Created and imagined by Jim Ivan, Scraper First Strike uses UE4 to deliver gamers into the year 2076, where they must battle renegade robots in high rise skyscraper complexes. Next up is Boundary, the multiplayer tactical space-based shooter that puts players in the role of heavily armed astronauts in space engaging in fierce zero-gravity firefights. Fully customizable loadouts, weapons, and ammo types across 6 classes of astronaut are available for players to choose from in multiple game modes. And last but not least, in Lemons Must Die, John Lemon falls into a strange world full of monster lemons while chasing after the ghost of his beloved Liz Lemon. The pressure is on as you leak juice, your life force draining out, run and jump through levels, exploding enemies on the way, using their juice as your life force. Thanks for joining us for this week's News and Community Spotlight. Have a great week.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Unreal Engine livestream. I'm your host, Victor Broden, and with me today here I have Galen Davis, Head of Evangelism at Quixel. And Galen, you're going to talk a little bit about how Quixel and the team of yours use some of your tools to create Rebirth, which, if you haven't seen it, we're going to play it a little bit later here on the stream to make sure that you all know what Galen will be showing. But without further ado, I'd like you to do your thing now.
Cool.
Because it's very exciting. I'm very excited to have you here.
Me too.
We've been talking about this for quite some time now.
Yeah, this is fun. No, I'm super glad we're doing this. Yeah, it's a dream being at HQ. So
Well, you're very welcome to be here.
Cool.
We're happy.
yeah, well, okay. So I guess I'll kind of introduce myself a little bit first, and then we'll kind of get into some of the things that we're going to be covering today. So I guess I'll start. Yeah, my name is Galen, and I'm head of evangelism at Quixel, like Victor said. So basically what that means is that I'm kind of traveling around, visiting developers all around the world, in the game space, in the film space, enterprise, and everything in between, and just kind of talking to them about how scan data can potentially kind of fit in with their workflows. And it's really cool. Obviously, we have a ton of overlap, with Unreal and all the clients, that we deal with, that are using Unreal. It's always like really kind of a nice kind of common ground that we find there. So. And so, yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about Rebirth today. We're going to go into more of kind of like the story and like the behind the scenes kind of approach to the story and everything that we did with Rebirth. And then we also have, I guess you guys have already announced it, but Side Effects will be here next week.
They will.
And
yeah.
then, so they're going to be doing kind of a more like technical deep dive into like some of the things that they actually like did to help us out in the demo. So I won't steal too much of their thunder, but they're going to be on next week, and they're going to cover a bunch of cool stuff there too. And then from there, we're going to jump into the editor and start messing around with some of the stuff in the Megascans ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I guess let's go ahead and
let's
get started.
get started.
Cool. So I guess I'll just kind of start here. Is the video playing? We good? No, sorry. The
Heading over
first
to
slide
the
there. Is it running?
Slider.
Okay, perfect. Gotcha. Okay. So I guess we'll just kind of start with a brief overview of Megascans and sort of what we do. So we are the largest scan library that's currently available on the internet. It's the highest quality scan data that you can get. We build all of our hardware completely proprietary in-house. It's a completely proprietary workflow for processing it as well. And this allows us to control quality through every step of the way. So what's really kind of cool about what we do is that we're all around the world scanning at 5 continents, on 5 continents at any given time. And that allows us to just get a huge amount of content from some of the most amazing places all around the world. And what's cool about that is being able to just assemble your worlds however you kind of see with that scan data and kind of using that as a jumping off point for whatever it is that you're making. It's fully render agnostic, so whether you're using Unreal Engine or using an offline render and anything in between, we cover all those different calibrations. So obviously we're going to be kind of featuring more of the Unreal kind of calibration today, the Mentalness workflow. But anything that you're kind of using for your workflow is something that we cover. And it's fully scalable as well. So, I mean, as far as the 3D objects, they're lotted all the way through LOD 5. And we have cinematic grade quality meshes there as well. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about that, like when we get into Rebirth.
Yeah,
so.
you showed me that you can export in into almost anything, and that's
Yeah.
that's really cool because it means that you're looking at these high quality scans and high resolution textures. You're like, oh, that's not for me. I'm a mobile developer, or we're
Exactly.
trying to push this for console. But I thought it was even lower than 1024 that you could actually export from.
Yeah. Yeah, we have to be able to cover, any type of development paradigm. So, I mean, that's kind of what we kind of set out to achieve with the library. It's fully scalable in that regard, right? Like the idea for us was to kind of have a digital prop house of sorts. It's kind of the best way to
Okay.
think about it. Being able to go into this warehouse and just pick whatever you need off the shelves and assemble your worlds from there. So, yeah.
It's really neat.
And so I guess then now we'll kind of jump into Rebirth and just kind of talk a little bit about that. So I'll start just kind of giving like a really brief intro for actually like what Rebirth was for us, and then we'll kind of dive in. So basically what we wanted to do was set out to kind of make a real-time demo. We knew that we were going to use Unreal Engine from the start. We knew we were going to use it. And we wanted to kind of make kind of like a movie trailer of sorts with a loose narrative and some VO and some music. And yeah, so we're going to jump into everything here, but let's go ahead and roll the clip first so that people know what we're talking about.
Adaptation. The ability to learn from past experience. The use of knowledge to alter their environment. These virtues defined our creators and drove them to the brink of destruction. But we cannot exist without them. We must save her. What of our creators exists within us? Humanity has always had the potential to recognize its flaws and choose a better way. Can we save humanity? Was bringing her here the right choice?
That's beautiful.
It was all me.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
I see.
it wasn't. No.
it's that effective?
No, so it was a huge team effort. And yeah, everyone that was involved did such an amazing job. So we'll go ahead and give shout outs to like all the companies that helped us and all the people there too, kind of here at the end and everything. So, so we'll kind of dive in a little bit to just kind of the genesis of this whole thing. So you guys can kind of see exactly like where we started and how the idea kind of formed. So the start of this is basically that we went on a scan trip to Iceland. Iceland's been on our radar for a long time. We always knew that we wanted to go here. It's some of the most amazing territory that you can actually like get to. And so we sent our largest scan initiative for this trip. Actually, there were there was 12 members that actually went to Iceland, and they were scanning in the worst conditions ever for over a month. We filmed some of the better ones here. But the idea here was essentially that they were going to go to the most amazing place that we could really kind of get our hands on and get literally everything that you're seeing here in a lot of these shots. So when we go and we break down environments, we're literally scanning everything that we can get our hands on. So the largest cliff face down to the smallest rock, twig, leaf, and branch. That's kind of the general ecosystem philosophy that we take, like when we're kind of taking these types of trips. And what that does is it really just allows artists to take that content and basically recreate that world one-to-one, right? We're giving them everything they can possibly need in order to reassemble that ecoregion. We also provide a lot of reference photos from the actual trip, so that's actually kind of included now as part of the offering on the Megascans library, and we'll kind of run through that like once we open up Bridge and everything. So we knew that we wanted to kind of start with forming a basic narrative. We knew that if we were to kind of make this demo, that it had to have some type of weight, some type of gravity, right? Like something that wasn't just kind of pretty pictures on the screen. And so we played around with the idea of architectural elements, maybe a vehicle, and then like a voice, right? Like all these different elements definitely kind of came along the way. It wasn't like we had this grand vision at the beginning. Unfortunately, we kind of stumbled into the success that is Rebirth. And so all these different things kind of added up to make what we have now. But this was one of the initial kind of exploration bits that that our partners, Beauty of the Bit, actually made for us, like to kind of figure out what would it actually look like to put like a big structure actually in a very like Icelandic kind of world. So that was kind of one of their initial exploration videos here. So this is one of the paintings that Victor Bonafonte did at Beauty and the Bit. And this was really kind of a seminal moment for us when we saw this painting. This was taking a lot of our reference photos and the images that the guys had actually gotten in the field in Iceland and actually kind of mashing that up with a nice kind of like sci-fi element, which was this vehicle, which is kind of our character. And so what was really pretty cool is seeing this image and then this next one here, the idea of really cementing in our minds exactly what it is that we wanted to do. When we saw these, I think it really kind of came together. We knew what we wanted to make, and from there it was just kind of off to the races. We had the content already cooking at that point, so that content was starting to hit the site, but these were some really important images for us to actually start to visualize exactly in our minds what we wanted to do.
And by cooking, you mean taking all of the data that you received from the trip
Exactly.
from Iceland and
Yep.
processing it into actual meshes and textures and everything
Exactly.
else.
Yeah. The whole processing pipeline is something that, that it takes a good amount of time to kind of like rev up a little bit for us. But once we kind of get the data all in kind of a good spot, then you start to see, like if you're seeing Roman assets at the site here, Icelandic assets are still trickling in. Like those are big pushes from trips, right? Where all that stuff is kind of be calibrated and like set, good to go before it starts like hitting the site. So
Cool.
yeah. So again, like this is gonna kind of this image here, this video rather, is gonna kind of feel go into some of the other shots that we're gonna look at here. But what this is kind of showing is just the general breakdown that Victor did in his painting process of actually kind of taking those reference images and forming something that would be considered Final Pixel here for us. So these are the types of paintings that ended up fueling these types of shots here. So as you're seeing, we're really trying to create it one-to-one. Like that's kind of the idea for us. Victor did such an amazing job of actually kind of making these paintings for us. And so the rendering and everything like that just really kind of was top notch on his part. So we really wanted to try to recreate it one-to-one. So, and I'll talk a little bit about like the actual real-time or real reference that we gathered on these trips. So we have a lot of photos like this, right, of literally just the guys, shooting on their iPhones out a window, right? A simple shot like this is something that very much informs the way that our artists were actually working when they were making this demo, right? It seems kind of like just a throwaway image, but the thing that's amazing about it is you can actually gather so much from just a simple shot like this, right? How does the moss build up on the rocks? How is the moss and like the greenery actually creeping up the mountains? Like these are all considerations that we have to make when we're actually making artistic decisions inside of levels. And so for us, taking these types of photos were just so important. And we've got a lot of them of just, again, something that seems kind of pedestrian here, nothing too crazy here. But this shot specifically was one that actually, if you go back and watch Rebirth, there's a shot of like the shed, the sci-fi shed kind of there. For a while, we actually had basically this same shot and that sci-fi cone in there, and we kind of ripped out the sci-fi cone. But shots like this are enough to kind of inform the way that those images kind of came together. And then, looking at atmospherics as well, right? Fog is obviously one of those things that's so important when you're trying to craft a really kind of believable level in every type of shot that we did for Rebirth. And so here you're kind of seeing just how does fog lay across the ground? How does it sort of move through a space? What does it look like close to rocks as opposed to the road? And then looking at it from a distance, right? All of these things are super important when we're kind of making these decisions. And then some of our hero pieces just kind of out in the wild, right? Like these are really important shots for us as well, because if you're going to place this type of hero asset, it's important to sort of look at it and sort of see how it's integrated with the sand, how plants maybe form around it, if there are plants at all. Like all these things actually kind of lend itself to the realism that we actually created with Rebirth.
Yeah, no one stacked those rocks there, right? It has formed like that over thousands of years.
Yes. Yeah, they are crazy rocks. Yeah, those were just rocks that I'm sure they walked past and they were like, we have to have these,
Uh-huh.
right? They have to have them. So I'll show just kind of like the first lineup that we did of kind of figuring out the general flow here. So what this is just showing here is just the progression that we were looking to kind of create, right? So starting with very cool tones, starting on a very micro type level, very small elements in the scene, introducing a little bit of color as you start to progress, and then having this really nice balance of warm and cool kind of coming together to form the final composition. So this was really cool to kind of see this fully laid out. Not all these shots ended up making it in, and some of them are actually some of our previs shots inside of Unreal that were super helpful actually. Unreal was really important for us in actually working through the previs process of figuring out how certain assets would look, how terrain and everything like that was going to start to work. And so we used a lot of Unreal actually in this sort of previs phase to sort of inform the way that we were building out this flow. So we'll kind of get into that a little bit later here too. But again, like this has sort of informed the way that we also started talking about elements like music, right? Like starting with something that feels very conflicted and dark, and moving towards something that is hopeful and has like a sort of a major kind of resolution to it. So yeah, this is a really cool kind of lineup that Victor Bonafonte did for us.
Would that be considered a storyboard?
Ish, right? I would say like this is more just kind of a concept lineup for us, and then we
Okay.
actually took these and created an actual timed out version with like musical mock-ups, right?
see.
And to us, that was more storyboardy. But yeah, I mean, at the beginning, right, like the storyboards that Victor did were very loose sketches of, we know that this shot's going to go to this one, and then it's going to go to that one, and then these are more of like his kind of final renders that he did. And these are just paintings inside of Photoshop, So from there, we started to develop the idea of having a vehicle in the scene, right? Like I showed you those two shots of like the highway, and then also just kind of the vehicle kind of peeking out between the rocks and everything. The thing that was really cool is we knew that we wanted to kind of have like a sci-fi element, but we needed to sort of explore what this world was going to be, right? Is it sci-fi in nature? Is it more like Mad Maxy, right? Like what is sort of the tone that we're looking to kind of strike here? And so we enlisted the help of Fausto De Martini, who's an amazing concept designer. And so he did this this vehicle for us. He did the high poly version of it and everything, and helped us kind of explore what some of the shapes would look like, how the lights would sort of sit in the scene, the fog and everything. But yeah, he did an amazing job with this, and this is kind of like our hero moving through the level. So, and then the guys at Side Effects will talk next week a little bit about how they went about kind of crafting some really easy tools inside of Houdini to crunch this thing down and make it usable for us in seconds. It's
Okay.
pretty amazing. Because I mean, for us, we didn't want to spend a ton of time retopologizing this, baking it, and everything like that. We were kind of focused on other things. So yeah. So I'll show. This is kind of our process of kind of figuring out what the megastructure was actually going to look like. This was a big struggle actually for us in trying to figure out exactly what we were looking to do, compositionally speaking. Victor did a bunch of mock-ups for us here, and all of these, you know, have their own merit and everything, and we decided to kind of move towards the more kind of inset, you know, kind of blocky shapes that we landed on, obviously. But this is sort of the process of figuring out what is this world sort of going to look like, right? You know, we ran into a lot of issues, even in this very early stage, of evaluating what the composition would be. Does it make sense, right? How would these actual structures integrate into the mountains, right? In that last shot, you see the way that it kind of sits, right? So it was definitely more of sort of a sci-fi approach to the way that we kind of wanted to build that architecture, and a very kind of brutalist in nature. But it was pretty amazing to kind of see this initial mock-up here of all the different versions that he did. So this was sort of the first hurdle. The second hurdle was actually like once we dropped this into a scene, is actually getting the scale to sell at a distance, right? Inside of Unreal, you have a bunch of camera settings, obviously, right? You can really kind of bend it to your will and get it to do exactly what you need it to do. But we actually had to run a couple, we had to do a couple tricks in order to actually sell the scale even further. So part of that was a little bit of camera trickery, and the next part was actually detailing this structure out in a way to where we could actually get something that was usable. And so they'll talk next week about it. Again, I don't want to steal their thunder here, but they made some amazing Greeble tools for us that just allowed us to quickly kind of lay out entire concepts and or entire panels and everything like that just seeding values and getting new results very quickly, right? And so they did an amazing job with that tool. But this was some of that initial exploration and trying to figure out how the scale would actually work, because it's inset into a mountain, so it's pretty tricky. But so I'll talk a little bit about the content that we started to gather for this, right? So this is Bridge. We're going to go into it here with a live demo here in a second. But this is just showing some of the stuff that we captured from the Icelandic scan trip here. So I captured this specific video like a month ago, so there's probably like even more Icelandic assets that have hit since. But the whole point for us with making this demo was that we were not holding this content back in any way while we were making it. As those assets were being crunched and being processed and put onto the site, they were going up day and day for us as they were for everybody else. We didn't want to say, oh, you can't play with our toys until we have our big moment, right? For us, it was all about letting our entire community have access to everything day one. And so, yeah, so we didn't hold any of that content back. But the thing that's pretty cool, and the reason I'm showing this here, is that this is actually only about 20% of everything that we've captured from Iceland. So we have a ton of content that's still left, entire eco-regions that we haven't even started tapping yet.
And this is within Bridge, right?
Yeah, this is inside a Bridge. And we're going to do kind of like a look at that here in a second. But yeah, if you're not familiar with the way the Megascans library kind of looks, this is basically it here. It's got some nice search functionality and everything. But yeah, we'll go into that here in a second. So the next thing that I'll talk about real briefly here is that we used LiDAR to actually inform the way that mountains actually sat in the background of a lot of our shots. So unfortunately, there isn't any LiDAR data that we could get from the regions that we were looking for in Iceland. So we actually sourced our data in Alaska. So these are the actual two locations right here. So if you were to go and download these, you would literally get exactly what we had inside of the demo. And the thing that's pretty amazing about LiDAR and everything is that it's actually accurate up to about 50 centimeters, which is insane considering the scale of what we're downloading.
And
here.
it's done from a satellite, right?
I'm not exactly sure how these ones were captured. I know there's a bunch of different ways to capture LiDAR, but since it is mountains, I would hope, as opposed to taking a thing and moving it,
across
every
the mountain, yeah.
yeah,
That'd be a hike.
yeah, that would be a lot of work. But yeah, I mean, the whole idea for us is, again, not necessarily relying on proceduralism or our creative eye, right? Like actually using the real world to sort of inform those types of decisions. And so LiDAR was super important to kind of sell that realism there. So we started to move, obviously, into Unreal and start prototyping what these levels would look like, benchmark some performance stats and like everything. And like I said, Unreal was heavily used in sort of figuring out for us, not only in the previous side of things, but actually sort of planning out how a lot of these shots would come together, how we were going to build out systems of, building the levels at night and everything like that. So each of the shots is kind of its own level is the best way to think about it. So we had to figure out clever ways of kind of sequentially kind of baking that stuff out overnight and rendering frames so that we could iterate very quickly. But this is kind of one of the initial exploration shots that Owen did for us. And this is before we had a vehicle concept at all. And so we have this, we called it the cigarette box, kind of moving through the scene. And, shots like this, this is just, for Owen, this is probably like 3 or 4 hours of work of just throwing assets into the scene, some basic lighting, some fog, and then testing to see like how lights actually like function inside of this level. How does it look for the rocks to react to the light as it's moving through? What is the fog doing? And the camera move itself, is this dramatic enough? Is the speed correct? All these things we can discover very quickly inside of Unreal. And so that's why we used, a lot of this kind of workflow here at the very beginning, as opposed to figuring these things out later, right? So Unreal definitely allowed us to do that. So again, I'll show you some of these benchmarking tests. So this is one of the very early shots that Owen threw together here. I think this took him like 4 hours or something. And just kind of showing basically that you can get a bunch of scenes or get a bunch of assets like from our Icelandic set and kind of throw them into a level and just see how things kind of work on a performance level. I talked a little bit about the different calibrations or levels of detail rather at the very beginning. And so I'll just kind of circle back to that real quick, because what we offer is a cinematic grade quality mesh for all of our 3D assets. And depending on the asset, that can be in the millions. So it's very heavy, right? We're not able to instance 100 of those rocks if they're all sitting at 2 million polys,
Yeah.
right? It's gonna tank the viewport real quick. And so this was an important test for us here at the beginning to start to figure that stuff out, right? What was the poly range that we needed to kind of get in order to have a really stable frame rate? Having a really stable frame rate was really important for us in building this. Every scene that you're seeing inside of the demo actually is very performant, right? So the lowest one we have at any time, I think, is like 24 frames a second, but we have some that are way up over 100.
Do you know what the final render is running at?
Oh, so I mean, we dumped frames for it, so I mean,
Okay.
it's you know, it's flat across the board. So, but yeah, I mean, for all these shots, like I said, since they're all individual levels, they all have like kind of different performance stats in that regard. But the important part of this whole process here of kind of figuring out what was going to work and what wasn't is actually running some simple A/B tests of figuring out, okay, if we take that cinematic grade quality mesh and we reduce it, what are we going to be able to, what are we sacrificing? What are we getting, you know, from geometry if we start to crunch things down even slightly, right? And what we found, in fact, is that doing a simple A/B comparison of reducing it significantly, right? Taking a 2 million poly mesh and making it 250,000, right? We actually had basically the same result.
Okay.
It's pretty amazing, actually. So, so our friends at Side Effects helped build an amazing tool inside of Houdini that's basically kind of like a fancy version of Decimation Master. And Decimation Master inside of Houdini really kind of allowed us to sort of make this very quickly and crunch all of our assets down to something that actually made it usable inside the viewport. Because like I said, performance was super important for all this. So
That's
So you-
beautiful. That's an image from the actual final render, right?
these ones didn't make it in, actually.
Okay.
So yeah, these are just some exploration. Yeah, just really simple tests inside of Unreal. But yeah, I mean, just trying to see how some of these assets also kind of sit next to each other, right? Like, how would plants interact, you know, with some of the sand? How are we going to get maybe like a nice blend to kind of work between 3D assets and maybe terrain actors and these types of things? So these were super important shots for us to develop early on. And like I said, Owen threw each of these things together in about 4 hours. I mean, they're just no work whatsoever for him. He bangs them out real quick. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'll talk a little bit about, like I said, performance and sort of the general approach that we had to sort of building this demo in general, right? For us, education was also a really important component of what we were looking to do here. So we have a lot of training content that's actually up on the site right now. So I won't get into like too specific to a lot of the things that Joe covers in his video, and I think you can link that, I
Yeah,
guess,
I'm
in
gonna
the
link
chat.
that.
It's a full like 45-minute breakdown that Joe Garth did for us. It's an amazing video. And really what it's just showing is how we were able to kind of like take these really nice like cinematic grade quality meshes and throw it all together with lighting and fog and cameras and everything, right? We weren't trying to hide the ball at all in making this demo. Like he says in it, there's no smoke and mirrors here. Like these shots are running at very stable frame rates for us. We're going to open one of them up here actually here in a second. And start to do some really kind of simple stuff. But yeah, I mean, Unreal made it really simple for us to really kind of tackle everything on the post-processing side, on the camera side of things. It was so helpful just to be able to do all that stuff inside of the editor, right? We didn't have to dump any frames out and do, you know, additional modifications after the fact. It just worked, right? Everything came together really well. And the education side, again, is really, it serves a couple purposes for us, right? Primarily, it's just so that we can show people, hey, like, you can do this too, right? It's important to note, too, that Epic didn't give us, like, the Game Shark build of, Unreal Engine. This is, we're using the very standard version, 4.22, and, it was fantastic for us the whole way through. So, yeah. And so, yeah, definitely check out that full video, because it's just chock full of amazing content. So these are some of the shot breakdowns that Joe threw together for us, just so you guys can kind of see exactly like how some of these scenes were actually assembled, right? So lots of assemblies, lots of small elements that were actually like going into the grounds to make it feel a little bit more believable in that way. So not relying just on displacement and normal maps to actually get like some nice undulation in the surfaces on the terrain, actually relying on full geometry and getting some really, really nice results there. So these are just some of the breakdowns of some of the different scenes here. it's important to note, and the reason we're showing this too is that there's no matte painting in any of these.
Okay.
That was one of the questions that we got from people of like, hey, are you guys using, you know, matte paintings for terrain actors or background elements or anything like that? The answer is no. You know, we have everything in here. It's full geometry. We didn't even like load anything down to like billboards for like background elements.
It's all,
yeah.
that's
It's
really
all
cool.
3D, yeah. So, I mean, each shot right is developed for the specific camera angle,
Mhm.
so that's important to note, right? So, I mean, yeah, like we definitely kind of built each shot in that way, so it is kind of tailored to that camera. But for the most part, I mean, you're seeing no smoke and mirrors here as the kind of the video is showing here. So I'll talk a little bit about the music as well. This is something that we really wanted people to kind of see. So I went to dinner with my friend Jason Gallaty, who I worked with at Ember Lab, and I went to dinner with him. We knew that we wanted a composer to kind of make something that was original for this demo, and he was like, first of all, I love Icelandic music, and I was like, okay, we're with the right guy already.
Uh-huh.
You know, we're in the door here. And he had this idea of actually reaching out to this amazing musician named Terje Insingset. I'm probably butchering his name.
It's close enough.
Norwegian, yeah. So he actually records all of his sounds and his music with ice instruments. So literally, as you're seeing here, we rented out an ice rink in Canada, and all the instruments, he carved them all out of ice. So we have percussion instruments and horns, everything. It's just absolutely incredible. So as you're kind of seeing here, like these elements that he's recording, if you go back and listen to it with headphones, you might be kind of surprised of like, what is that sound? Maybe I don't recognize it. It's probably ice. And that's Jason right there.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that kind of recording setup before in the middle of an ice rink. And
Yeah, pretty wild. He's just an amazing musician. I mean, the whole kind of theme that we were looking to kind of strike with this that Jason made here was kind of the theme of like a refugee maybe fleeing something, right? So this vehicle is kind of moving through the space, right? It's traveling very quickly, and then it sees, you know, the actual structure,
Mhm.
and that's kind of like when the resolution really starts, and it starts getting more hopeful and everything, and it's less tense. So another really important part of what we did here was actually kind of work with what was called OpCap, is what our friends at Ember Lab called it. But it was a VR setup for cameras. So what we did here is that we already had our camera track set up inside of the editor. Really simple moves. You're not seeing anything too crazy aside from the car chase. But those tracks were already set up for us in Unreal. And then what we wanted to do was, instead of layering on noise, you know, that you can do inside of, you know, these other applications and stuff when you dump frames, we actually wanted to have the VR setup inform the way that the shakes actually happened here. So you're seeing here for this car chase, like we're all shaking it at like different levels and speeds and everything to try to simulate what it would actually be to like be on a bumpy car ride and stuff.
You were mentioning they were trying to get the right weight on the virtual camera rig.
Exactly, yeah. The guys at Ember Lab are amazing with cameras. They're all like amazing film students that they came from Chapman Film School and everything. And so they are just the biggest nerds for cameras and everything, know way more about it than us. And so when they told us about this setup, they were like, yeah, no, and it's truly weighted, you know, exactly the way that we would weight it, you know, if we were to, you know, be shooting this stuff like with an actual camera and everything. So you're seeing those weights
Yeah.
and everything. And it's cool because it allowed them to kind of function in basically what was a director and a videographer kind of working like directly on a set, right? He's calling action, the sequence starts, there's a little bit of a warm-up time, and then we kick all those frames, or the the actual keyframes back up to kind of interpolate between the original camera move and then the slight noise there. Yeah, so they did an amazing job. Our friends at Ember Lab just absolutely crushed it with this. So they helped us out with the music and then the cameras here. So, yeah.
Do you know if they're using Sequencer to record the camera tracks inside Unreal?
So I'm not entirely sure. The sequencer, I guess, was probably like where all the keyframes like started, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the interpolation, I'm not sure where the interpolation actually happens, but yeah. So I guess I'll just kind of do a quick credit screen here, obviously. So, I mean, obviously huge shout outs to all of our guys, you know, that at Quixel, from the guys that planned all the trips and packed lunches for people out in the field, and the scanners themselves, and everyone in between on the processing side and marketing and all that stuff at Quixel. I mean, it was an amazing team effort. Everyone really just crushed it on this project. So it was super awesome to be a part of it in a small way. And Beauty and the Bit did all of our previs, like we talked about. Victor Bonafonte and his team crushed it with that. Our friends at Side Effects, they'll be here next week. They'll talk about their contribution to the project, and they were just so helpful along the way. And then Ember Lab, you know, with cameras and music and stuff. So really awesome team effort. And obviously everyone at Epic that really kind of helped us kind of create this and market it and make it something that we really truly stand by. So
Yeah, you did quite a blast at GDC.
it's fun.
When we were playing the trailer earlier, I pretty much get goosebumps every time I watch it, and
It's
it was
fun.
without audio as well. It's just the visuals.
Yeah, it's fun. They did a great job. So, all right, cool. So that's kind of the basic presentation here. So I guess we can jump in now to the engine stuff and
Yeah.
the bridge. Okay. All right. So screen, are we good? Oh, is it double screen? Oh, there's just a delay. I got you. All right. Maybe.
Let's see. It's about to happen. We're doing a bit of a new setup here today, so making sure that it's a little bit easier for Galen to bring his laptop in and run it all from that.
It's all good.
So yeah, but as well. There we go.
Perfect. There we are. Okay, cool. So this is Bridge, kind of like we were talking about earlier. This is basically the way that we wanted to kind of build an application that runs standalone on the desktop that mirrors the site with a bunch of extra features in here. So if you're familiar with the way that the Megascans library looks on the website, this is going to look very familiar. But there's a bunch of extra features kind of baked in, and we'll talk about some of those things as it relates to Unreal, and then we'll kind of get into like a quick demo here. So I guess what I'll do to start is just going to show you guys some of the new updates here. So the big thing is obviously, like, you've seen collections and you're familiar with this kind of eco-region approach like we talked about of scanning. So like for Iceland, right, like I can just view here. I can view the collection this way if I want to. I can also, like in the search tab here, I can just type in Iceland if I want to. So there's a bunch of different ways to actually like interface with this. On top of that, I can filter by asset type. So if I want a 3D object, if I want a surface or what have you, you can filter that all the way down. The thing that's really cool that we've added in here is actually being able to 3D preview on some assets here. So as you can just go to like a 3D preview here at the top, and you can actually see the asset live in the viewport. On top of that, we actually have the maps associated with it, so you can evaluate and just sort of see like what those maps actually look like. Makes it really easy to just sort of make like an informed decision about what it is that you're actually downloading before you do it. On top of that, we've included kind of the scale feature that's been on the site for a long time. It shows whether or not the asset is open or closed, which is pretty important for people to kind of know. And then similar assets, right? So you can just sort of see like where some of these other assets were potentially downloaded or where they were actually scanned. So in this case, this is a Roman trim, right? So we have a bunch of stuff from Rome that's actually hitting the site. And those assets, you know, you would see those in the similar tab there. But this is a really just kind of neat and intuitive way to kind of interface with the library. And the other thing is we're going to be rolling in a lot more kind of reference photos. That's some of the things that people have really been asking for, of like, cool, you scan this thing somewhere. How does it actually integrate with the world, right? Like how do, like we talked about with the rocks, like how does certain like plant life interact with sand as it maybe sits next to a rock or in a different place, right? Like these are all really important things. And so those reference photos and stuff will be hitting in a more regular cadence here going forward. So I can see everything that I have acquired. I can see everything that I currently have downloaded here. And then I can favorite objects here or surfaces as well. And this just allows me to say, hey, maybe I'll come back to this later, download it when I have some time or whatever. And then we have our free section of the site here as well. So a bunch of assets that you can go and you can just take a look at, evaluate, test the quality, and sort of see just exactly what it is that we're offering. So that's kind of the simple rundown of Bridge, I guess. I guess the one thing I really want to point people to also is actually the user manual. It's something that is really well documented. Our guys did a fantastic job of documenting everything in Bridge. It's fully customizable in this way. So we're going to talk about the Unreal integration, obviously, and everything that kind of goes into that. So the important thing to note here is that we understand, that different development communities are using different types of the editor. They might even be using proprietary elements layered on top, right? So for us, we wanted to make it fully customizable in that regard. So it's something that you can actually go in with the API that we offer with Bridge, and you could customize it. So really simple things, as in renaming assets, deciding where they will go in a project, all those types of things. And you could get even crazier with it with the API because it's just, you can do whatever.
Where do you access the API?
So basically, like, there's just a bunch of documentation here inside the user manual. And this actually shows exactly like how you would kind of obtain the build and everything, and then the way you can actually kind of use different calls with it. So it's pretty nice, yeah. So like one of the things that people are really asking for too is like a sync feature. So that's one of the things we rolled in with kind of the newer version of Bridge here. But it's fully documented here, so definitely go and take a look. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Cool. Well, I think what we're going to do, since we kind of did a quick overview here, is actually jump in, and I'm going to just throw some assets into an Unreal scene just to show the basic workflow. We're going to do some surfaces really quick inside of Quixel Mixer, and then bring them in, make some blend materials, throw some assets in.
Nice.
Yeah, and we'll kind of do that.
A little bit of the workflow.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start just inside of Mixer. So if you guys aren't familiar with what Quixel Mixer is, basically this is kind of our material authoring software that's just a zero learning curve approach to blending and making new materials using the Megascans library. So the thing that's really cool here, we'll just kind of stream test. Cool. So you can work at whatever resolution you want, so it's fully non-destructive. So let's say you're working on kind of a potato laptop at home, but you want to export 8K, right? You can work at 1024 and then download everything at 8K, kick everything back up at 8K when you're ready to be done with the project and export. So we'll just start with a simple 2K document here. So this is the UI. It's very minimalistic, very easily approachable. It's very similar to Bridge. So if you guys are kind of like we were just looking at here, you can kind of see the way that it's really kind of integrated with the library here. So same search functionality. You can bring in your own assets here as well, something to note. So you can actually kind of bring in, let's say you want to sculpt something inside of ZBrush, or you want to model something in Max or what have you, bring in your own like clone stamps or whatever it is, or actual like alpha stamps. You can bring all that stuff into Mixer and make your own content if you don't want to just use the library, right? We actually encourage this, right? We really want people to find new and creative ways to actually build their own content based on the library. It's super powerful in that regard. With the vastness of the library, the thing that we found is people are making mixes where the base is something that looks nothing like what the end result is. If you go and look at like Victor Ullmann, who's our lead artist at Quixel, you just go and take a look at some of the mixes that he's done. It's insane. Like he makes these crazy alien skins, and they start with like concrete. It's like how does this work?
And you can mix and match your own assets there and blend them then with part of the library. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's super powerful in that way. But yeah, it's super user friendly, and again, just the zero learning curve approach to this. So I'm going to make something really simple. We're just going to kind of make a simple blend material inside of Unreal. So we're going to export 2 different versions of this, and then we'll kind of go from there. So I'll start just with adding a basic surface. So I'm going to start with this Icelandic sand and pebbles. This is really just kind of a standard run-of-the-mill kind of scan from us from the Icelandic trip. And it just looks really nice here. I can affect the different repetitions here inside the viewport. I can actually go and rotate the object or rotate the scan here as well. There's a bunch of different options. I can change the color. I can affect the low frequencies or the high frequencies and everything in between. Make different presets if I want to. It just really makes it super easy to kind of make some basic manipulations here. So what I want to do is this is going to be sort of the base. This is going to be the element that I'm going to start with, and then I'm going to layer on some really kind of simple things on top and just make a quick variant of it. So I'll actually just duplicate this. Control D allows me to do that. And what I'm going to do is actually kind of add, we have a nice mask stack feature inside of Mixer. And the best way to kind of think about this is actually if you're familiar with working inside of 3ds Max, modeling with a stack, it is very similar to that, right? So it's
Okay.
kind of I like to think of it as a nice blend between the mask or the stack inside of 3ds Max and Photoshop, and being able to kind of hop between the two. So it's pretty nice in that way. So I'm just going to add in a simple noise here. And so like I said, we're kind of making a variant of this. So what I'm going to do is actually try to get some simple variation here. And what I'll do is actually kind of lower the albedo. But what we want is maybe for this element to be a little bit more glossy, like it's actually something that like it's a little bit more wet. So what I'll do here is I can go in and I can start to affect the amplitude of this. So let's say I want, I can just change the seed value here, affect the frequency of it, affect the amplitude even more, so that I can kind of get something a little nice. And then feather the threshold a little bit till I get something that I kind of like. Cool. I mean, that's just kind of something really simple here. And then the thing that's cool here on top of this is if I wanted to, I could layer on, let's say, an additional noise on top of it, and I can set the blend mode to like multiply, and then affect just the way that this actually kind of masks out even that. So again, affecting the frequency, maybe affecting the amplitude here till I get something that is just a little bit different than even just that bass noise that I started with, and affecting just the way that blend mode and the opacity on top of it kind of affects it. And just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting here too, I'll actually rotate it and then maybe affect just the offset slightly so that we're not getting just a one-to-one of the gravel that originally was kind of sitting there. Just kind of get a little bit more breakup than we did here before. And then I want to put in some big rocks. So I really like this scan here. This is just a really nice texture of some kind of larger elements. And what I'm going to do is actually just kind of pull some of the larger rocks from this. But the way I'm going to do that is actually build up the low frequency from this and then set it to blend from below. But the thing that's really cool here is I'm just going to only pull like some of those rock elements into the mix here, so that I'm still keeping the original kind of gravel that I was working on before. And then from there, kind of blend in some of these elements too. So the thing that's really cool, like I said, is I can maybe duplicate this and maybe rotate it. And then if I want to, I can make a really simple adjustment if there's like elements that I'm looking at, say, okay, maybe this element is a little bit too recognizable. I can go ahead and paint it out. Really kind of simple just approach to that. So just a really simple mix here. The last thing I kind of want to do is maybe add in some dried grass and leaves, because I think this looks kind of nice. And we'll set this to blend from below, feather the threshold slightly. And now we've got something just in almost no time here where we've actually kind of gotten something that looks pretty decent. And it's a nice kind of difference from what we had before as just our base. Just like in Photoshop, I can alt-click here and see the difference of like the base and then everything that I've layered on top. I can preview all the different channels here. So if I want to preview just the albedo, I can click 1, 2, go through all the different channels here. But yeah, I mean, that's we'll call this just stream test here real quick. And let's go ahead and export this, because I think it's looking pretty decent for making a nice blend material here. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to export this to the library. And we'll call this sand wet. And we'll make this just into, let's say, custom. So a custom category. And I'm just going to be exporting 2048 for this just for the sake of time. And we'll go ahead and click save. So it's exporting all the maps. And like I said, you can jump between different resolutions here, obviously, but you can also jump to different calibrations. So we worked in metalness, but if we wanted to jump to spec gloss at any point, we could. So if I go back over to Bridge now, I can see that this asset here that we just worked on is actually viewable, and it's inside of my library very quickly. And there it is. So that's pretty neat, just being able to look at everything that we just did here inside of Bridge. So it's really just kind of a nice way to kind of approach content, organizationally speaking.
A little bit less going back and forth.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it's just super easy. And then I'll export just this base one, and we'll call it dry. Even though I already have this one downloaded, I'm just going to blend between the two, just to make it a little bit easier here. All right, so let's go ahead and now bring all this content inside of Unreal. So as you see here, we have the sand dry and sand wet. So that looks all good. Let's jump into Unreal now. So here I am inside of the level. This is just this is a 360 scene. We're actually working on giving this to Unreal users. We're still trying to figure out exactly how we're going to do that and when. But this is just it'll be a nice kind of peek behind the curtain of how we kind of assembled some of these areas and how how users can actually kind of take this and learn from it, right? So what I'll do here is, as you can see, we have the Megascans plugin here at the top. And so I've already installed it. It's really simple to install. But we have full videos and breakdowns and documentation, everything on our YouTube channel there.
Yeah, I did. It was like a few minutes.
Oh yeah, you and I did
Yeah.
it yesterday for you. Yeah, it took no time. It makes it really, really simple. So what we're going to do is actually now bring this content in. So I'm actually just going to leave this camera here, and I'm going to bring in a ground plane. So I've already kind of brought this in here. Hit F to sort of focus on it, and I'll scale it up just so that we can see it a little bit better. And we're just going to be painting on just a ground plane. Nothing fancy here. It's just a tessellated plane. So what I'm going to do now is actually kind of bring this content in. So what I'll do is jump back over to Bridge, and let's go ahead and export. These. So what I can do is I have a bunch of settings here. I'm going to be exporting at 2K with JPEGs. But if I wanted to, I can actually go in here and I can customize this even more. I can pack channels if I want. So if I want to do just a basic RMA, I can do that. I can change the name of it with different prefixes, LOD settings, suffixes, and everything. So it just makes it really simple to kind of customize it even further. But we're just going to be using just a standard export here for this. And I have my project location here, so I'm going to be in the Rebirth folder. And we're going to be using 4.22 obviously, but let's go ahead and just click export. So the idea here is that we're trying to remove as many roadblocks as possible. So we're just importing here really quickly. One of the things that's really kind of time consuming in actually bringing a lot of content in is actually setting up shaders and doing all the work to kind of get everything looking the way that you want it to, right? So right out of the box here with one-click export, we actually have our shader hooked up. And it's really simple here. This is just kind of using the Megascans master material that we have. It's a really simple material. It's nothing too crazy here. But what it does do is it allows you to make some very simple adjustments to these materials and textures once you've actually brought it in. And so this is just, let's say you wanted to slightly change the roughness value or the albedo or something like that to match the asset next to it. It's just a really kind of simple approach here. You can obviously modify this now if you want to, or if you're working like most people are kind of with their own master material paradigm, you can actually use that and point to that as the target so that all of your assets actually go in and they plug into the correct slots.
And that's such an amazing feature because you don't have to go through and sort of rip out what came in and put it in your own, instances and change all of that. It will just inherit from it.
Yeah, it's so simple. So as you can see, everything went in here, no problem. And then I'll just kind of look at some of the settings that we have. We have simple color overlay in this material instance. I can enable tessellation, subdivision levels, change the roughness. If I want to, I can affect the tiling. Really simple stuff here, but enough to kind of get started and make some simple adjustments. So the next thing I want to do is actually bring in this other asset here. So I'll just go ahead and click export on this. So this is our dry sand. So bring this in. And as you can see now, this is actually applied to the plane since I had it selected. So the next thing I'm going to do is just hold L and click and just drop a light in so we can see a little bit better. And then scale it up a little bit, maybe affect the intensity, just so we can kind of see a little bit better. It's a pretty ambient scene just in general, so just want to drop something in here so we can kind of see a little bit better. So the next thing here is if you look at the Megascans plugin, we actually have this button that says Create Material Blend. Now, what's really cool about this is that it's literally that. It's a one-click solution to make a simple blend material. And so what I'm going to do is just select these two materials here that we were working with before, the dry and the wet, and just create material blend here. As you can see, it made a material. I'm just going to drag this onto the surface. And now, if I go into start mesh painting, I'm just going to be painting on the red channel here. So this is with no information in the red. So I'm just going to scale this down a little bit. So now if I'm if I'm hitting Control and Shift and painting on this, then I can actually see the blend right where we were from the wet version to the dry version. So it makes it really simple to kind of make that material very easily. So what we have inside of here also is just some really simple features. So I'll just kind of look at that. It's very similar to what we were looking at before with our other instance. But what I can do is, let's say I want to, well, there's a world of line blend here too, which is pretty nice. So if you have a 3D object, you can actually have maybe snow that hits on the top of an object and kind of blends down. So that's pretty neat. I'm just going to turn on some subdivisions for this so we get some nice tessellation and bring out some of those larger features there. So set it to like 20 and then bump the offset here. So now we're getting some of those larger stones really kind of actually like protruding a lot more than we were before. So it's pretty neat, just a really simple approach here. So let's actually go ahead now and actually bring in a 3D asset. So very similar workflow here. We're not really doing anything too crazy. But what I want to do is I have this really nice jagged lava outcrop asset here. I love this asset. It's so cool. And I'm just going to bring this into the editor here. And so what I'm going to do is just click the export button because I have all my settings already hooked in from before because I'm just exporting 2K. And we'll jump back into Unreal. And everything is being imported just like that. And boom, we have our asset ready to go inside of the editor in no time whatsoever. So there it is. So again, we can take this a step further, like we were talking about before, of blend materials and everything. I'll just go ahead and drop this in, scale it up a little bit so we can kind of see it a little bit better. All right, so what if we wanted to kind of paint like a really simple blend, like from the ground up to this object here. So I'm going to use the Megascans plugin very simply here. I'm just going to filter by material instance so I can see this here. And we're going to grab the material of the actual assembly here, and then the dry version, and create a material blend. And I'm just going to apply this to the object. So as you can see here, we need to actually go in and make some adjustments to the vertex colors. So I'm just going to flip it. So now I have my base texture, which is obviously the base of the asset that we were looking at before. But if I start to paint now, I have a really nice blend on this object. And obviously I'm just kind of painting really quick to kind of prove a point here. But you see what I'm kind of getting at of just being able to really simply make a blend super nice in almost no time here. So I'll just kind of affect the strength a little bit maybe, and maybe just sort of feather this a little bit so we get some nice variation. So yeah, I mean that's the Megascans plugin inside of Unreal. Super easy.
Yeah.
We're going to be adding more features and functionality here to this over the coming months. But and we'd love to hear just in general from the community if there's a part of the workflow that maybe we haven't featured yet, or there's something that maybe they want to see. Those are all things that we're totally open to hearing. So
Where can they reach out to you?
so we have our social channels. So Instagram, we have got a big following on Instagram. We read every YouTube comment. So YouTube is really great for us. And then Twitter as well. So our Twitter is down there at the bottom, Quixel Tools. And then Quixel Official is the Instagram. So if you guys want to follow over there, so yeah, at Quixel Official for Instagram. And we've been posting here just kind of regular updates of assets that are going live or maybe big announcements and stuff like that. So definitely go and check that out. But yeah, we'd love to hear just in general from the Unreal community the types of things, you know, that maybe we could do a little bit better on, or anything in between. So
Yeah, we can all always improve, right?
of course.
Yeah. They were wondering a little bit how how it deals with tiling texture. So most of the textures, they are tileable, correct?
Yeah, all of the surfaces are tiling. Yes.
Surfaces. So, but not the ones that are for models or specific for models.
No, because the models would be unwrapped in that
Right.
way. Yeah.
So they actually have, and how does it? They're just tileable, right? Someone asked essentially how you deal with tiling, but that doesn't go much farther than just how normal tiling textures work, right?
Yeah. So I mean, as part of the processing pipeline, like that's one of the things we have to do, right? Because if we were to scan, let's say, just the carpet on this ground, right?
Mhm.
It's not perfectly tiling, right?
No.
So we have to kind of go in and make some simple corrections on the processing side to actually make it usable in that way. So really, we're not making drastic changes to these assets at all or this content. It's just enough to make it tile.
Okay. They're also curious what the performance cost of sort of the basic material that you get when you're importing your materials. Do you want to show them any instruction counts?
Sure. I mean, yeah, we can take a look. Do you want to look at the blend material, or do you want to see?
Yeah, we can do one or the other.
Sure.
Compiling, as always.
Here,
Yeah.
so I mean, yeah, 194. So-
194.
And then with the vertex shader, yeah. So I mean, it's pretty light. Like
Yeah.
This one's obviously like a little bit more involved.
And
for
that's the blend
blends.
one, right?
This is the blend one, yeah.
Mhm.
So being able to kind of, because it's actually all the different channels here. We actually have like a puddle channel too, where you can paint in puddles and stuff
Okay.
like that. So, but yeah, I mean, you can fully customize this too. And then if we were just to look at like our standard's really basic here.
130 base pass.
Mhm.
Did we get it right? Yeah. Well, it's definitely not anything that's difficult to work with.
No, we're not breaking the bank with this. Don't worry. Super simple.
You can if you want to. If you throw those AK textures in,
That's
start
true.
populating your entire world with
It's
them.
true. Yeah.
Definitely for hero
The
assets.
future is 8K.
Yeah. Are you ready for some more questions?
Of course. Let's do
Cool.
it.
So one of our viewers asks, "Hi, I'm a student environment artist and would love to play around with these assets for a bit. What's the pricing for these?"
So hopefully we're at your college already.
Okay.
If we're not, then we need to be. Because we actually have an educational offering. So I'll pull that up really quick, actually. So let's go here. Sorry, they moved everything recently.
And we should mention that Quixel is one of our sponsors during our game jams, and they actually give you access to, is it the 4K or the 8K during our game jams?
That is an Amanda question.
It's one or the other, but it is full access to the library, whether to give you the AK textures or not. I'm not entirely sure. I think Amanda's looking it up. And so during even a bit of time before the game jams and then during the jam, you'll be able to download the 8K. Yeah, you get full access to the 8K library, and you can play around with everything that's in there and use it for your jams as well, which is a really nice thing to do
Yes.
for everyone for the jams. And it's a perfect time, right? Because jams, you want to play with new things and try stuff you haven't tried before.
Totally.
So that's really
So to answer the question about education here, so the educational offering for an institution is free.
okay.
We have what we call the educational XL kind of license here, but that's for the institution to pay. And that's a really simple cost there. But the educational offering gives you, as you're seeing here, it gives you access to Mixer, Bridge, and 400 assets. So we give those to colleges for them to just go wild with.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because we really want to get kids kind of using this stuff like while they're learning. Because I mean, this is something that's being adopted in all of the biggest video game developers
and
and
it's a-
film
it's a-
companies. So
It's a new workflow. There are new tools, and that's sort of what you should stay on top of.
Yes,
when you're learning,
totally.
because the industry changes really quickly.
yes, it does. Yes, it does. And we try to make a bunch of YouTube content as well. So if you go to our YouTube channel, we actually have a ton of content on there. We're always making new updates to where it's like, hey, we made this new feature set for a Mixer or Bridge or what have you. So we have to be constantly updating our education stuff there, as you guys do for sure. So
I'm gonna throw out another link to the sort of tutorial around Rebirth in chat
Cool.
there.
Cool.
We got tons of questions here, so I'm just gonna keep going.
awesome. Let's do it.
With the current computer setup, what frame rate are you working with? How far down the road do you think it is to have this kind of look in real time?
I mean, you saw it running in real
Right.
time. Yeah. So I mean,
I think that we're referring to after we played the Rebirth cinematic.
Okay, so like I said with the cinematic itself, each of those levels or shots rather is its own level, right? So they have like different performance for each of those. So I mean, we would dump frames for consistency, right? Like because we were just making basically a trailer, right? But yeah, it never got below anything like 24 or anything like that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, but we have different scenes that are running in the upwards of well over 100. So yeah, so everything's super performant in that way. We were not looking to have our artists kind of slog through, working at 4 frames a second, placing rocks. Like that is just
Sort
a
of defeats
nightmare.
the purpose of the real-time workflow, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I should note that all of our artists that were working on this project at the time were using 1080 Ti's. So I mean, it's not like they had crazy cards or anything like that.
Yeah, and
really basic setups.
there's no ray tracing in the cinematic. No, that's
No, yeah, that's
pretty
I
amazing
forgot to
how
mention that. Yeah, sorry.
that you're able to get such high cinematic quality, even without
Yep.
one of the new fancy features that.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I should note, I guess too. So, I guess for all of the interior shots, that is that's all baked lighting, and then everything that's outdoors was all dynamic. But I
Okay.
mean, everything outdoors for the most part, it's relatively ambient in nature, anyways. So we're able to kind of like use that to our advantage a little bit on the performance side.
It's neat. Do you have any tips on setting up the lighting for a scene, and do you plan on adding trees to your scanned assets?
Yes. Yes and yes,
Yes
and
and
yes,
yes.
actually. Yeah. So we have a lot of yeses there. So first thing as far as lighting, I guess just a general tip about lighting, less is more. The fewer lights you can put in, the better.
Okay.
Once you start like dropping in 50 lights to really dial it in, you'd be surprised of just like how bad that could end up looking.
And the added complexity, I guess.
Sure, yeah. Obviously, you're making it a little bit crazier there too for the scene. So, for Rebirth, we actually on that tutorial that you're linking out, actually, Joe covers his setup in full for all of our shots, right? So for the most part, we had a directional light and a skylight in our scenes, like for everything that's ambient there. So yeah, I mean, for just general notes like on lighting, less is more. That's kind of my approach.
It's a good tip.
But yeah, definitely look at Joe's tutorial because he'll cover the whole breakdown. Because the other thing to keep in mind here too is camera and fog, right? Like lighting is one component of like this larger sort of look that you're trying to get. And so yeah, they're definitely interconnected. So definitely spend a lot of time looking at those assets or that part as well.
They were wondering a little bit about the fog, and since we're here and since you're
Sure.
here, they were curious. Is it using any of the tools in Unreal? Is it a height fog, atmospheric?
So it's different for each shot, but yeah. So the height fog was kind of the standard one that we use for most of this. So just kind of going out into the distance and everything. What we did do, and the guys at Side Effects will cover this next week, is that they actually did some really simple fog effects for us inside of Houdini, and we layer that in to kind of break up the actual the way the fog actually sits.
Okay.
So they'll cover it next week. But yeah, I mean, the standard fog was good, right? Like it gets you to that 90% mark, but for us, we really wanted that extra level. And so Houdini allowed us to kind of make some really nice fog that rolled over, the rocks and everything, and simple cards too, like nothing crazy.
Yeah,
So.
just mix and match of what works for the shot.
And I should touch on the tree question here as well. Yes, I just got back from Sweden. It was 2 weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago. I don't even know. I'm always traveling. But I just got back from Sweden. We did a huge scan trip, covered a ton of ground, scanned so many trees. It's
Okay.
ridiculous. Yeah, so we'll have a bunch of that stuff coming up, and some other kind of cool announcements surrounding trees soon. So
That's great.
yeah, but it was pretty amazing to see that whole process. I mean, like literally those guys are breaking everything down, right? We're scanning the leaves, we're scanning the branches, we're scanning the trunk, we're scanning the base, all of it. Like it's all like something that goes into making a tree. So
Right.
It was pretty cool to see. Yeah.
Exciting. Hope maybe eventually we'll get to see some shots from that as well. It's just interesting to see sort of all of your people working on at set, right?
Yeah.
How
Totally.
to go about.
They're all over the place.
Yeah. Any plans for regional pricing for the Quixel subscriptions?
Regional pricing. I don't think so, but I mean, I don't deal a ton with licensing to be totally honest. But every license that we kind of do is a little bit different. So on the business side of things, like there's always considerations based on the project and everything that we could kind of work out. So yeah, no deal is ever the same, I guess.
Okay. How long did it take for you to make this? What was the total time from like idea till ship it?
That's a good question. Yeah. So the scan trip to Iceland was in June of last year.
Okay.
So basically what that means is that we're scanning all through June. The guys get back in July. A lot of them took vacation as they well deserved after a month of scanning. It's very physical work. I discovered very quickly on the last scan trip. Very physical work. So then all of the data starts to get crunched and everything internally. And from there, we decided, we knew we wanted to sort of make this demo. But I would say that like really it came together probably of like the final idea of like, yeah, we're doing this thing, like probably somewhere in July.
Okay.
And then from there, we started to flesh out on the previous side what we wanted to do, build a team, hire people to do the work. And yeah, I mean, the thing that's pretty crazy about it is that in earnest, like work inside of the editor and everything that that we talked about today, like that work probably started in earnest maybe August or September, right? Like late August, early September, because there's a lot of planning obviously that goes into this, right? There's a ton of planning. And so for us, it was super short because we had to deliver for GDC. And so what that means is you're not delivering the day of GDC. Like everything has to be really like, squeaky clean, like at least a full week ahead. So,
Yeah.
And we butted up right up to that line, I would say, of getting it in safe. And so, I mean, from there, right, like June through like March, I guess, for everything, right? Like everything. And I should note that there were 3 environment artists that worked inside the levels, 3 total. And, the rest of the support, like we talked about, was just kind of, auxiliary elements to the demo. But yeah, I mean, 3 artists basically in levels checking things in.
That's
It's
very impressive.
Yeah.
Let's see. So we talked a little bit about the lighting. I had some more questions there, but I like that you referred to the tutorial since what was his name?
Joe Garth.
Joe Garth. He's actually one of our marketplace creators, I believe.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
does. He does a really cool product over there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was one of the environment artists on the demo, so yeah, he did. It's like 45 minutes technical deep dive. It's amazing. So definitely check it out.
Let's see. Does Quixel plan to also put distance meshes like mountains into the library?
100%. Yeah. I mean, for us, like on this last trip, actually, it was the first time that we really scanned with LiDAR. In fact.
Okay.
I think for us, it's a matter of figuring out the best way to sort of deliver that content, right? I think the scanning part of it is something that is easy for us. I think that's something that we're good at, right? It's a matter mostly about figuring out sort of distribution, sort of what people would be looking for there, right? If you were to deliver a mountain, right, even if it's a 16K texture, you walk up next to it, it's going to be super pixelated, right? So it's a matter of breaking it down into something that we think is going to be usable, right? So whether that's masks and like, different tiling textures to sort of associate with them, and a macro normal to kind of drive the directionality, really test deleted geometry on top of that. All those things I think are super valuable in assembling what would be a mountain, right? But it's up to us to kind of make it something that we think is going to be valuable inside of the library. And I think that there is a ton of value for those types of assets. It's a matter, it's a couple things, like I said, it's figuring out the strategy for distribution and figuring out how it would actually work. But what I can say is that we actually have been scanning with drones, which is pretty neat. So we have a couple assets that I'll pull one of them up here real quick, actually. So I'll go. So these types of assets, let me see if I can find it real quick. But these types of assets are actually doing incredibly well for us. We have received great reception from the community on these types of assets where we're literally sending scanners up on drones and gathering this type of data. So this is kind of, I would say, the first step in that direction.
Okay.
Right? And again, it's figuring out how to make something like this usable. So I think that, again, you still run into a little bit of the same problem like we talked about with textile density. But what is really pretty neat about all this, though, is that what we can do is actually separate the data out to kind of extract composite masks to figure out, like, where rock is and where moss is, and maybe there's dirt or what have you, and separating out tiling textures from that you would then pipe across the surface. So I think that's pretty cool, and that's definitely like kind of in the works right now.
That's great.
Yeah.
See, let's continue. Say you can't go to these places and get a close-up view of what they look like. What additional methods do you think help create the vision of the landscape without physically being there? I would say VR,
VR.
if you can.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different ways now, I think, right? Like, there's so much media that you can get your hands on, right? Like, even if it's just photos, right? Like, our artists that actually, like, were working on Rebirth, Victor was one of the only guys that actually went to Iceland. So Dan, who is our CG supervisor for this project, he had been, so he knew how to sort of inform the team about what he was looking for, right? And so from there, right, if you have people that have a nice vision for it, that can communicate that down to your team, I think that that's super valuable, right? So all that like Joe and Owen were looking at, since they'd never been to Iceland, they were just looking at, you know, images, right, and videos and all these different things. So whatever you can get your hands on, yeah.
There's a couple of amazing Icelandic bands that have some documentaries about them touring Iceland, and I think that's where I would head if.
Oh wow.
See. Are these assets ready to go in Engine as soon as they're downloaded from Megascans, or do they need to be retopologized manually before using them? It's straight in, right?
Yeah, they're ready to go. So I mean, if I look at any 3D asset here, I can take a look at the different LODs that are available. So LOD 0 through LOD 5, it shows actually like how many tries are actually associated with this mesh. So yeah, they're good to go.
See, someone in chat was interesting specifically about that crater. They were wondering if it's just one large mesh, or if it was sculpted into the terrain and decorated with different meshes or something else.
So yeah, that's a super tricky shot for sure. So the way that one kind of came together is that it's obviously cut into the terrain, right, a large gap, but then we took a lot of like these big assembly pieces, actually kind of like this one, and inset them into the actual kind of curvature of that gap.
Okay.
And so these types of assets, these large assembly pieces, were super valuable for that. I think I might be able to find some of these other ones, maybe. But yeah, I mean, since we did get these really, really large pieces like this, like these cliffs and this type of stuff, we were really able to kind of take these assemblies and make something that really kind of worked that crater into looking very believable, I think.
Yeah, it looks amazing, and I'm sure that's why they were wondering how it's done as well.
It's very heavy, I'll say that much. It's a
Okay.
very heavy scene.
They're wondering if you'll eventually be adding cars and other hard surface objects to the library.
Yeah, so actually, let me show some other stuff here. So we've actually started doing some hard surface stuff fairly recently. So simple barrels and some of these like power elements, electrical boxes, and this type of stuff. So we are rolling out this type of content into the library. So cars is a little tricky. What I will say is just in general about the library is that everything that goes into the library is free of copyright. So you never have to worry when you're working on a game or a film, is this content sort of clean in that regard, right? Like, can it pass through a legal department without them saying, where'd you get it?
Yeah.
You know, if it's from Megascans, then you're good. And so with that, the thing is that we have to make sure that when we're scanning something that it doesn't have copyright. So we have to be very careful about that. Everything goes through a lawyer. It's all like meticulously kind of cultivated in that way to sort of make an ecosystem and a library that's just like super easy to use. So yeah, from a legal perspective.
Right, and that gets a little tricky with a car, right? Because it has been manufactured by a company.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so those are a little bit trickier, but I mean, the thing for us as far as copyright is concerned is that we are looking to form strategic partnerships with companies that are willing to sort of take that leap with us and be able to feature, you know, their brand in a way and also kind of like get scans out of it. So we're working on that.
That's awesome. Let's see. I got some new questions here after I was able
Sure.
to go through in the first time. Just gonna make sure I grab something that that works here. We went through the shader. Do you use tessellation and POM on terrain materials?
We use no displacement whatsoever in Rebirth, actually. Everything that you're seeing is actually full geometry.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a decision that we made because we knew that we wanted to sort of leverage the higher resolution meshes in general. And then from there, that extra geometry really kind of gave us, better shadow quality and, the nice undulation, on the surface like we saw in that terrain shot where there's just assemblies littering the ground basically. So yeah, that was kind of the approach that we took for all that stuff. Yeah. So no displacement at all, actually.
In terms of optimizing, what do you look to enhance for performance other than poly count? It's usually everything, right? A little bit of.
Yeah, all that we can do is provide, the different versions for people, right? So on the
I think it
content
was
side-
in direct reference to Rebirth and making Rebirth.
Oh, okay. And for Rebirth, yeah. The big thing was like that tool that Side Effects made for us,
Okay.
right? Of being able to crunch the polys down to something that made the scenes actually usable. That's a big thing. Number of lights, obviously. The lighting method, right?
Mhm.
Baked versus dynamic and everything. Fog, everything. Like all those things kind of weigh in when you're kind of building performance or kind of vetting performance rather. So yeah, it's different for every case. It's hard to say, but
Yeah, there's unfortunately no one fits
yeah,
make performance better button in any project at
Not
any
yet.
time. Not yet.
I'm sure you guys will make it.
One day. Well, someone is making a make game button in the editor utility widgets. I'm just waiting for that. Procedurally generating games. That could be cool, just like music. Someone was asking if you could turn on ray tracing on this demo, and I don't think we'd be able to do that right here because it requires a little bit of setup in terms of the project, which we don't have time for.
Yes.
But as far as I know, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to use the Megascans library in Unreal using ray tracing. It's
Oh,
just like any
absolutely.
other mesh and texture, except that it looks really, really, really.
Yeah,
Good.
we actually vetted ray tracing for Rebirth. We decided against it. It was still kind of an emerging piece of tech for us, and we
Yeah.
just weren't we were already kind of too pot committed, with the standard paradigm. And so yeah, it's something that's obviously incredible. Like it's a huge step forward for the engine and everything. So we did not utilize it for Rebirth, but yeah, we could kind of take some of these scenes, and especially since they're so ambient, like all the outdoor shots, those shots, they'd fall in really quick to ray tracing. I think the interior shots and a lot of the moving shots would be a little bit more tricky to kind of harness ray tracing, just in a simple way. It
Mhm.
obviously can be done, but it wouldn't be as simple as checking a couple of boxes and here you go.
Yeah. Let's see. They're wondering a little bit more if there will be more city street modern assets. We can never have enough red brick walls.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Is there a red brick wall in there? I bet there is.
Of course, yeah. There's so many bricks. Yeah, I would say, yeah, urban stuff is way easier for us to scan, right? Depending on where you are, I should say. Like
Mhm.
certain cities, like you can't just walk into downtown LA and,
Set up
scan
a rig.
something.
Yeah.
That people will be like, "What are you doing?" We try to go to a little bit more remote areas, just in general. But yeah, urban stuff is way easier for us to scan than standing on glaciers and
Uh-huh.
you know.
Walking on lava
Yeah.
rock and
Yeah.
bringing
So-
a whole team and all the equipment out there. Yeah.
Exactly. I was just in Savannah a couple weeks ago. That city is incredible. I was walking around. I was like, we have to scan everything here. It's so cool.
That's kind of a cool mindset that most of you must have, right? You go play, especially you that travels a
Yeah.
lot. You'll come to a place and just be like, oh, I just want to scan all of this.
My girlfriend is even now saying, you should scan that. And I was like, yes, you're right. We should scan that. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's everyone.
Hitting up everyone on Slack.
Everyone.
Yeah. Sending little Google pins.
Mm-hmm.
What's the weirdest thing you have scanned?
I would say if you type in animal, animal is probably the weirdest. So we have like a dead bird. So that's a thing. We have a bunch of guts. Some weird skins and flesh and stuff.
Yeah, we're talking about how you can blend those together to make some really, really gnarly looking zombies and
Yes.
otherworldly creatures.
Pretty nasty stuff. Pretty nasty stuff. So I'd say that. We've also started to scan a lot of food. And so, I mean, I think a lot of this is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Just to see like, oh yeah, no, someone at our company ate an apple and then they scanned it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, like that's kind of funny.
Who's the bread maker?
So this, I'm pretty sure it's Pernilla, which is Victor's wife. And So
Okay.
yeah, so she's one of our scanners out in Borby, and yeah, so I'm pretty sure that a lot of this is her doing.
Looks like a professional bread and pastry maker.
Yeah,
Let's
pretty
see.
good stuff.
They're wondering if there will be any samples seen from Rebirth available to look through.
We're working on that scene that I was just in. Actually, we're working on figuring out distribution methods for that scene. So I don't have any announcements for that today, but I know that we are looking to release something because yeah, it's one of the big questions that we've been getting. Right? Of how did you do this? Are you guys a bunch of liars? You know, like everyone wants to see, obviously. And so yeah, we want to, you know, first and foremost educate people, right? Like make a ton of great content so that they can consume it. And then, you know, past that, I mean, actually give them the things so that they can take a look at it themselves, right? But yeah, I mean, like I said, all the Icelandic content that you've seen in the demo it's available to download today. So yeah, have at it.
Go get it. Let's see. Do you have a trees count for any of the Rebirth levels?
I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I don't know if we should talk about that. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I wasn't an artist on it, so I couldn't tell you exactly what some of those levels weighed in at. But
And then I think this is going to be the last question actually because we're almost about to run out of time.
Cool.
Any plans on scanning? I think human skins is what they're asking about.
So I don't exactly know of like that being on our immediate roadmap, but what I can say is that it's a little bit baked into our DNA. So Teddy, who's one of our co-founders of the company, he actually came from Starbreeze, and he was scanning people and faces and these types of things when he was working there. That was one of the things that he was in charge of,
Okay.
among other things. But so he actually has done this, you know, earlier on in his career, obviously. But there was definitely like a passion that he had, you know, for that and everything with scanning just in general. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that comes down the pipe eventually. I would say that we have a lot of things to shore up with just the stuff that we've already bitten off currently.
Right.
And so for us, it's something that we've obviously like thought about a lot. But yeah, no announcements for that today, but I wouldn't be surprised down the road if we start scanning people.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming here all the way over to Cary,
Thank
North
you
Carolina.
guys. This was awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I'm so happy you were able to make it and show us all this amazing content. I already told you that I know what I'm doing this weekend. Playing around with all of this. As for all of you out there in chat watching, if you enjoyed the stream or have any feedback for us, I think Amanda's about to drop a link in the chat for you. You can go ahead and fill out that survey. Everyone who fills it out and enters their email in there will take part in a sweepstake, and you can win an Unreal Engine t-shirt. I think it might be this one right now,
It's a
or
nice
very
shirt.
similar. Yep,
It's a nice shirt.
It's this one. I don't know if it can be seen. Oh, right there. Yep. Getting my laptop in the way. And as always, make sure you look out for our user groups. There might be one in your area if you want to go ahead and discuss, especially if you are doing some amazing work, maybe even bringing a little bit of Quixel there. Share all your work with them. It's unrealengine.com/user groups. And you can go ahead and see if there's anyone in your area. If there isn't, please go ahead and contact us at community@unrealengine.com if you are interested in actually starting one, and we can go ahead and get you a little bit of information on what that's like and what it usually entails, and some tips and tricks to how to get your meetup to get some people get people to come there because it's a little boring if it's just the organizer.
Yeah.
We have several online communities. You might have heard of them before, but I usually refer to our own official Discord, Unreal Slackers. There are now over 20,000 members of the Discord server, which is
Wow.
very impressive. And I think everyone is there to help out and learn. And yeah, except for Discord, of course, our forums. That's actually where we look out. If you did see the countdown video that we have at the beginning of the stream, we'd love to see more of those. It's essentially 30 minutes of development, maybe playtesting, doing something in your project. It doesn't have to be a game. It can be anything made in Unreal. Go ahead and fast forward that up to 5 minutes and send that to us with your logo or your name, and you might be one of our part of one of our countdown videos. If you're streaming on Twitch, I saw Chad talking about it earlier, but make sure you go ahead and use the Unreal Engine category so that we can tune in, see what you're working on, and maybe throw you be able to help you out a little bit, or maybe just look at all the amazing content that you're making. As always, follow us on social media, and a big special thanks to all of our sponsors, including Quixel. Next week, we have Houdini coming up, like Galen mentioned, and they're also going to go over sort of the part of the Rebirth workflow that they were able to help out with. And I think we'll be able to, there will be a couple of their developers, and so I think we'll get a really nice breakdown of what they were able to do there. Hopefully a little bit of that animated shader fog, or the animated fog, that's
Pretty dope.
what I'd be pretty interested in seeing. And so with that, we are saying goodbye here, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.